The number one most common problem I see when people walk or run that causes undesirable stress on joints and tissues is that they have early knee extension, or their knee locks out before their hip can extend. As I take a step forward and strike the ground, I need to begin to load body weight onto that side. So my hip is going to need to move over my leg and my hip is going to extend. So as that leg comes underneath us, the hip needs to posteriorly rotate to allow for that to happen. If I lack hip extension and or my knee locks out too early, the only way I can get my leg behind me is if I push my low back forward, which is going to overly extend the low back. So this is back extension in substitution and a compensation for a lack of hip extension. As I load my body weight onto that side, my hip needs to move over my foot and my knee should not extend too early, because if it does and I lock out my knee too early, the only thing I have available and left to push myself forward is my low back, rather than actually getting my hip to extend, and then my knee extends and locks out to allow me to push to the other side. This is also associated with other issues that I commonly see, which I will address in the second part of this video series. A lot of times people with this issue have a pelvis that's forward or in a position of anterior pelvic tilt, so they're always in a position of a little bit of lumbar extension. And in this case, they're going to be missing full hip extension, so it's not really going to be available to them. We need to train hip extension and improve that, and also work to delay knee extension. So here's one exercise you can do that will really cook your glutes and your hip extensors, restore hip extension, and also delay knee extension. In my beginner body restoration and lower limb foundations programs, getting hip extension back is a prerequisite to be able to unlock the mechanics of the lower limb. So this is an emphasis early on in my programs. This is the standing supported step through with a hip extension focus. We're gonna get about an arm's length distance away from the wall, and we're gonna initiate this by just getting a soft bend in the knees. Now, we're gonna pick up one leg, and the bottom leg, the grounded leg, is now the active leg. We need to keep the whole foot flat throughout this entire exercise, but focus on the arch of the foot, the inner heel, and the ball of the big toe right here. That doesn't mean we're rolling on the inside of the foot all the way. We need to keep the outside foot flat, but we're just focused on those 2 points, because that will help us feel our hip extensors, like our glutes. Now what we'll do is we'll bring that swing leg back and we'll tap the toe in the back. And now we'll bring the hips underneath us, maintaining a slight tilt of the pelvis and maintaining a slight knee bend. We're gonna tap the heel in the front, and as we bring our hips underneath us all the way, we're gonna feel that glute engage big time on that stance side leg. So if our pelvis was a bowl of water, it's not spilling out the back or the front, it's nice and neutral and on top of this femur right here, this thigh bone. And now we'll just repeat. We'll come back, maintaining the knee bend, and then come through and make sure you get your hip underneath your trunk right there. The most common mistake on this is that people are going to end up bringing their hip too far forward. So it's almost like they're going to end up in like a sway back posture with their hips underneath them there. You just want to end up with the hip nice and neutral, stacked over that femur and underneath the ribs right there. And if you do that too much, you're going to feel your low back engage and your back kind of arch underneath you like this. So make sure that you're not going too far right there. And the other thing is that as they bring that leg through, that heel's going to lift off of the ground. Make sure that doesn't happen. Focus on that arch reference, and that'll help you feel that glute more. One of the most important muscles that helps delay this knee extension is the soleus. This muscle attaches on the Achilles and the fibula right here. This muscle creates plantar flexion and propulsion. So if you do a calf raise, it does that action. But as it shortens from mid-stance to propulsion, it needs to work to slow down that knee extension as the hip moves over the leg. Here's one way you can train that, and you can train hip extension before knee extension without using your low back. We've got a towel, and this towel is folded over a couple of times, so it's maybe about a ½ inch to an inch thick, depending on what you're looking for here. And we're just gonna use this as a reference for our midfoot. So Trevor, I'm gonna have you take one step onto there. Yep, so he's got his forefoot. The front half of his foot is now on this towel here. So he's going to support his weight on his forefoot here. And he is going to keep a little kickstand in the back with that left side there. So it's really important that we stay on our forefoot in this activity. We don't want to go too far on the toes. We want to make sure that we're keeping our weight right directly here the whole time. And I would say almost all of our weight is going to be there. This left back leg is just a kickstand. It's not doing much of anything. It's going to stay in the exact same spot. So now what we're going to do is get the knee over the toe to start. So we're going to push that knee so that it covers the second toe and we can't really see the second toe. That's generally a good place to be. And now we need to keep this exact same degree of knee bend the entire time. It should not bend or extend 1 degree from there. It needs to stay in more or less the exact same spot. So now what we're going to do is just tuck our chin, keep our chin tucked, and round our back and fold over as we try to keep our leg in the exact same place, and he's going to reach for his toes, keeping his weight in his midfoot, that area that we pointed to earlier. Once he gets there, maintaining that background, he's going to keep this background, keep his knee in the same place as he goes up. He's going to go up, 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 nice and slow, and he's going to keep his knee there, delaying that knee extension, and he's going to get that full hip extension, ending right about there when his hips are parallel with the ground. That means that he has completed the rep. He should feel a ton of soleus and glute on that same side because he's been pushing through the midfoot on the way up. The number one mistake we see in this activity is people will extend the knee before they extend the hip. So if we go down on the bottom there, it's first really important that we're pushing through the midfoot there. But what people have a tendency to do is as they stand up, the knee is going to extend before the hip, and then that's also more likely to make them arch their back too. That's the other thing that we see. So if we go down to that bottom position there, we want to go really slow, but we also want to make sure that this back isn't going to arch as we come up, because if it does, that's also going to be probably tied into the knee extending too early. So if he arches his back before, then he's just going to shoot his hips forward, and he's not going to get that full extension. We're going to know we're doing it right if your back is staying rounded and you're feeling your glute and also this deep calf muscle right in here working as you stand up. That's a really good sign you're doing something right. If you're having trouble keeping your knee forward, one thing you can do is take a bench, like a weight bench, and then just flip it on its side, and now you have a reference for your shin angle. So right here, you don't want to rest it entirely on there so it's supporting your weight. Just keep it lightly in contact there, and then just go through that motion. And you should be able to reference it throughout, and if it pulls back off of it, you know that you've lost that shin angle that we want to maintain.